go over negative 3 sine 1.
That's where you check your answers. All right, so I'm gonna pick a question that Winston suggests me. Yes.
When you know when like you're gonna make a peak and then like a crowd thing.
Okay, I'm gonna go over two questions. One is what Winston told me. What is that? What equal to negative 3 sine what? 1/2 x. Good. So it's like this. And Sydney, give me a second question. You can name me cosine one.
So negative 2 cosine of 3 over 2x.
3 over 2x like this. Okay, good. Okay, so let's go figure out everything together. This is how what I figure out is start with the amplitude. Amplitude is never negative, so it's absolute value negative 3, so it's equal to 3. Is that okay? Period for sine and cosine is always 2 pi over b. This is the only thing I will ask you to memorize. If you need to memorize, write down with the index card. Make sure you know it for AP exam. For sine and cosine, it's always 2 pi over b. For tangent and cotangent, it's pi over b. But we haven't got to graph tangent and cotangent yet. So this is 2 pi over 1/2. Is that okay? So that means it's 2 pi times 2 over 1. So that's equal to 4 pi. Did you guys get 4 pi for period? Now a quarter period is just divided by 4. So it'll be 4 pi times 1 over 4. That's equal to pi. So that means every pi is going to have a constant change. Are we okay here? Now write down the statement. If you don't have a write down, you should write it down. If you have a positive sign, right? Positive sign. So you can even write down says a positive sign start at midline and goes up because it's a positive. If you have negative sign, then start at midline. So all the things start, all the signs start at midline, goes down. Okay? Is that okay? If it's a positive cosine, then start at peak. And positive, a negative cosine start at trough. So negative cosine start at trough. So basically, if you know this, you should know how to graph sine and cosine graph it. You should know where to start. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start at 0, 0. And each one is going to be quarter periods. So this is going to be pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. It's the same scale. Is that okay? So since it's negative 3 sine, so it's negative sine start at the middle and going down. Going down how many units? 3 units. So it's going to be like this, like this, like this, like this. That's one cycle. That's one period.
How did you know like what each value, like what you were doing with the line?
Okay, so you look at the amplitude. Amplitude, that means you're going to have a change of 3. That means you go to the next quarter period, it's going to go down 3. Because that's a quarter period. That's why you figure out quarter period first. That means I'm going to go right pi. I'm going to go down 3 units because sine, negative sign is middle going down. The lowest one is at a trough, which is that's going to be your minimum.
So for every quarter period, or like
there is a drastic change on the sine graph, either changing from minimum to a midline or midline to the maximum, or maximum to the midline, or midline to minimum. So far, does everybody understand? Now let's go to start a second one. This one is going to be a here. So we know amplitude is absolute value of -2, so it's 2. Is that okay? Period is equal to 2 pi over 3 over 2, which is 2 pi divided by 3 over 2, like this. Or is equal to 2 pi times 2 over 3. So that's 4 pi over 3. Is that okay? Now, a quarter period is equal to 4 pi over 3 divided by 4. So that means 4 pi over 3 times 1 over 4. So that means each change is pi over 3. So I just changed my scale. Now I want to keep the same scale because that makes easier for me. So that just say this is a pi over 3. This is a 2 pi over, I'm just going to go with 2 units because I want to. So instead of the 2 unit over there is pi, now 2 unit is pi over 3. 2 pi over 3. 3 pi over 3. And 4 pi over 3. What did they, this is cosine. Cosine start at where? 12, right? Start over here, 2 unit below. I don't know how you did it either. But that's okay, that make both of us. So it's gonna go toward the midline, right? And next one's gonna go to the peak. And peak is gonna go back to midline. Yeah. And you can draw the same thing on the other side if you wanted to. Oh, we're not getting there yet. Slow down.
But you said it has to be like bigger than 1. Ideally. That's why it can't be like other side.
Sort of. Any questions? Now, I want to talk about one more thing. Cosine of x is known as even functions. Sine of x is known as an odd function. And you can tell from the graph, why are they even? Do you know what's the definition of even function? They are symmetry to where? What? What's the symmetry of? Y-axis. It's an even function that has symmetry to y-axis. So from the left side to right side, they look the same. Our function is really different. Our function is look like, well, at least between here and here. This is a our function. Our function is symmetry to the origin. So this one is symmetry to origin. So if you want to know, if I plug in negative x, so cosine of negative x is equal to cosine of x. Sine of negative x, if you plug in negative x, is equal to negative sine of x. So that's why there's difference between even function and odd function. So you have to know that they are even and odd function. Yes?
Are you streaming?
I should be. I'll double check. Yes, I'm streaming. Make sure I turn it off though. Problem is now like I don't stream. It's like I don't turn off and becomes like 28-hour stream. And then after school I start talking trash about everybody, then it's kind of recorded.
Dude, you know you record yourself making the calc test, and then the kids look at it. You record yourself making the calc test, the pre-calc or whatever. I told Aiden, and they just looked at it.
Oh my god!
You told Aiden about it?
Yeah. I told them after like they took the test, like the extra 15 minutes, everybody knew what the questions were.
Extra what?
Extra 15 minutes he gave the class.
Ah.
They knew what the questions.
Why'd you do him?
Huh? Nah, he didn't. I think okay, Alex.
And you spell that
Thanks, bro. You got it around.
Yeah, but I want to finish this because this is more important right now. All right, so what we're gonna do is today we're gonna talk about ABCD, which is what if I have this y equal to -2 sine of I don't know 2/3 x minus pi over 2 plus 1. So somehow I need to change to this form. Y equal to a sine of b times x minus c plus d. Now, what's the difference between this and this? What's the only thing different? There's small difference between that. The b was, in this case, is inside, right? I need to make sure I always factor out. So that just say I always factor out. Make sure the b is outside like this. It should look like the b is outside like that. So far, do you have any questions? Okay. Now, I'm going to worry about factoring out. So y equal to -2 sine. If I factor out 2/3 here, that means I divide this number with 2/3. So for example, if you have 2x minus 4, if you factor out 2, that makes 2 divided by 2, that's x. Does that make sense? You factor out a number, you divide it by that number. Does that make sense? So every time you factor out 2/3, what do you do to this number? Divide it. So we know this is going to be x. That's easy. So what is pi over 2 divided by 2/3? So pi over 2 times 3 over 2, right? So it'd be 3 pi over 4. So it'd be minus 3 pi over 4. And then plus 1. So now the b, make sure you factor out the make sure. So make sure factor out the b value. And when you factor, you divide whatever you factor out. That's the first thing you need to understand. Second thing you need to understand that we're still going to find other stuff, but this time I'm going to find more stuff. The first thing I want to find the amplitude. What is amplitude? 2, good, because the absolute value of this is 2. Is that okay? Second thing I want to find out is the period, like usual. Actually, in this case, I'll probably find midline first. What is the midline in this case? What is it? Midline's what? Not 0, 1. It's a 1. It's a y equal to 1. Because this one is going to tell me the midline. Remember, we talked about yesterday. This is the midline. This is the m, and this is starting value. Starting x. Starting x. So what I mean by starting x, you're going to start right there to start your sine graph. And that's the easiest way to think about. So midline, do you guys understand the midline? Midline's the last value. It's a vertical translation. Now we're going to go to period like what we just found. So period is equal to what? 2 pi over 2 over 3. So it'll be 2 pi times divided by 2 over 3. That's equal to 2 pi times 3 over 2 pi, right? Or 3 over 2, sorry. So that's equal to 3 pi. So period is 3 pi. 4. What's quarter period? 3 pi over 4. Just divided by 4. I'm going to take a breather. Just make sure everybody understands so far. If you don't understand, please raise your hand. Let me know what's going on. Yes. Midline is the value at the end. This is D is the midline. What are you adding? A number or are you subtracting a value? So that's going to be y equal to -1. Anybody else? Now I'm going to talk about starting value. Where is the starting value? This one is kind of hard, but the starting value is at C right here. So it's moving to the right or moving to the left? Why it's right? It's inside the parenthesis. We talk about inside the parenthesis is always opposite to the sign. So it's actually right and 3 pi over 4. So go right 3 pi over 4. That's where we start. But also the midline too, right? You not only move right 3 pi over 4, you're also going to go to the midline. So what I would do is usually graph the midline. So this is a function here. And I'll graph the midline here. Midline is going to be something like this. Any questions here? Okay. So I'm going to go to 3 pi over 4. That's why starting value. This is a sine graph. So start at the midline. So I'm going to start right here. Because they shift right and the midline's up there, so it's gonna go right 3 pi over 4 and go up this. So Liliana, what we did is you're in the bathroom, we figured out what is this. This is the C value, which is inside the parenthesis, it's a negative sign, that means going to right.
Okay.
So it's at right 3 pi over 4. So we're gonna go right 3 pi over 4, start here. Usually we will start right here, but the midline is at 1, so we start at 1. So this is my first point. That first point is the hardest one to decide. Once after that, it's pretty easy. Because your next one is going to be what? 6 pi over 4, which as you know is 3 pi over 2. Can I just write down 3 pi over 2 here? Right? It's going to go how many units to the up or down? Down. So that's going to be, so this is 3 pi over 2. And that's going to be down 2 units like this. Actually, I'm just going to write down 6 pi over 4 because each time I'm just going to adding. So this is 9 pi over 4. And this is going to be 12 pi over 4, which is 3 pi. So this is going to be like this and like this. And I keep the same scale so I don't get confused. And then this one is going to be 15 pi over 4. So that's going to be like this. And this is negative 3 pi over 4. And that's my sine graph. Yes.
Number 4, what's 1 4? That's like 1 4.
1 4 period, sorry. Period. So a quarter period, because a quarter period is going to have a change. Now I'm going to do 2 things at once. Winston, put your phone away. Otherwise that's going to be out of window. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 things at once, because what if I ask you to graph y equal to -2, and I use different color to show you this. Cosecant of 2 over 3 x minus 3 pi over 4 plus 1. Now, cosecant is not any different than sine because cosecant is 1 over sine. Is that okay? So cosecant graph is just inverted. But in some way that you have to know one more thing is when sine graph touches Touch the midline, it creates asymptote, vertical asymptote. So when this touch a midline, it's going to create a vertical asymptote like this.
Wait, can you say that again?
When the sine graph touch the midline, it's going to create asymptote because it's going to be 1 over 0. 1 over 0 is going to be infinity. So that's going to be asymptote like right here, asymptote right here, asymptote right here. Now, if I want to graph it, it's super easy. Just graph it like this. Inverted parabola on each one. So the purple, darker shade, this is going to be a cosecant graph. And that will be the graph for the cosecant. This will be a graph of the cosecant, which is this graph is same thing as this one. So in order to graph cosecant, you need to know how to graph sine first. Now, when the sine graph touch the midline, it's going to create asymptote and just invert each parabola inside, and then you're done. How do you check your answers? Decimals. But the problem of you need another parenthesis here for decimals. You need another parenthesis, otherwise it's not going to come out. So I usually graph after I factor out, and because that's a better graph. So I'm going to go into graph. Hold on, let me take a picture of this. So that way I can give you, I don't have it. Somebody read it to me though. What is it? -2? Sine of what? What do we factor out? 2 over 3, and I'm going to put another parenthesis right here. X minus 3 pi over 4. Oops, my bad. 3 pi over 4 like this. And what else? Plus 1. So if I want to check your answer, this is how would I check your answer? I graph the midline first. And then you see where the point is. The point is 3 pi over 4 at 1. Do you see that first point? Do you see the next point is at 3 pi over 2, which was 6 pi over 4? At -1, because it goes down 2 units.
Why does it go down?
Because the amplitude is 2, and it's negative. So the sine is midline going down if it's negative. So it's going to go down 2 units. Go down exactly how far its amplitude is supposed to go.
So it goes to like +3 and -3.
No, it go to -1 and then +3. Because 1 subtract 2 is going to be -1. And then on the top, it will go up to 3. And then we say it's 3 pi. And this is how you check. You can check each answer, but you have to simplify the fraction. But at first, I will write down like said. It's easier for me just add up each time. So it'll be 3 pi over 4, 6 pi over 4, 9 pi over 4, 12 pi over 4, and 15 pi over 4. And then I'll go back to simplify it. That makes my life easier. Is that okay? Now, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say, hey, let's find out what is the graph of cosecant. So -2 cosecant of 2 over 3 and then x minus 3 pi over 4. You're going to see that it start coming to play. And the plus 1. And there you go. That's it will not show up like this. It will show up like this. But you really needed the sine graph in order to trace it. So I'm going to do that as a dotted line. So you show you that it's not an actual graph, but the actual graph that's inverted parabola over there. Yeah.
So like when you
3 pi over 2. 6 pi over 4, okay.
And how did you know like where to go next?
Because you start at the middle, right? You go into this as a trout. Then the next one has to go back to middle. It's like ocean wave. You go to the beach, right? You go in like sometimes you have this part of the wave, sometimes the middle part of the wave, and sometimes the top part of the wave. Right? Depends on what's gonna hit you on a curve, on a wave. Sometimes you get hit by like when you get like something overwhelmed, it's the maximum. When sometimes you hit the middle part of the wave, right? It really depends. Yes, Miranda? Okay, so whatever sine graph, whenever sine graph, we're talking about if we graph cosecant of functions here. If I graph cosecant function, this is inverted sine. Here, when it creates a midline and touch the sine graph, it's gonna create this asymptote on all the asymptotes there. So every time they touch the midline, the sine graph touch the midline, it's gonna create asymptote because at that time it's 1 over sine of 0. 1 over sine of 0 is 1 over 0. 1 over 0 is undefined. That's why it creates asymptote at those locations. So imagine that if I plug in 3 pi over 4 here. If I plug in 3 pi over 4 here, it's going to be cosecant of 0. Cosecant of 0 is 1 over sine of 0. 1 over sine of 0 is 1 over 0. 1 over 0 is undefined. So at any time when it touch the midline, it's going to create asymptote each time. Yes. No, they are not touchable. So it's like a vertical asymptote is like I remember I make fun of students, like, you know, it's like some of you guys relationship. You can get so close, but you never get there. What? I said that about Diego, I think. And that Diego has a girlfriend, boyfriend. Yeah, secant and cosecant will be cosine and secant will be the same thing. Yes, Sydney. In the brown here, this says middle, mid, and the trout. So when you go to mid, and the next one's if it's going down, it's gonna go to trout, and then it will go back to mid, and then go back to maximum, and then go back to mid, and it will go back to trout. So they are following the same sequence. It just depends which order it comes to. Any questions? Okay, so my challenge for you is ask you to graph something that's super. So we're gonna ask you cosine now. Make sure you factor out a b value. And if you can, grab the secant of this too. Wonder where you at it. after you finish, check on decimal. On the decimals, you gotta graph a midline first. You can see those points hit the midline first. What time we get off? 1:20? Okay. Check on decimals.
Let's say, will that like not be a cosecant of the very top? Would that be?
No, the graph of this one's gonna be secant, not cosecant.
No, for this one, for the one above.
Yeah.
For the one above, like up there.
Mm-hmm.
It's never gonna touch vertical, so like, isn't there any number for the vertical, like? So the cosine, cosecant of that number doesn't.
Yeah. It's like 1 over cosine of pi over 2. Like secant of pi over 2 is undefined. This is a midline. And I hear it's going to be 3 units below the midline. So this is the first point. It's a graph I have. Is that graph you have?
Yeah.
Is that minus?
This is 3 pi here.
You're right.
And I know you start with sine graph, or did you do sine graph instead of cosine graph?
It's just I got that.
3 pi is 6 pi over 2. Now, if a secant is like this,
Okay, wouldn't it start at the bottom?
what?
Isn't it negative?
Yeah, I think I just start at the bottom.
Yeah, it start at the bottom. This is at a 3 pi, right? I start at the bottom but below 3 pi. It's not supposed to start here, no.
I just forgot to move it right.
So if a secant is gonna look like this,
Yeah, mine is wrong too. I did the same. You moved it up, but you also forgot to move it. You forgot.
so that's the graph for secant.
Why did you start there?
Huh?
Move one further over.
Because this is right 3 pi. 3 pi is 6 pi over 2. And 6 pi over 2 at this point, because it's a -3. -3 cosine is a trout. It's going from midline down 3 units.
Well, that's inside the parentheses.
It'd be so funny if you did.
Somebody remind you.
I think we should like everybody like lift it, right? And like give everyone like